Cronenbourg 1664. Sponsor du Tour de France.
Italy may have lost the World Cup, but yesterday Roberto Conti gave them some consolation as he celebrated Brazilian style on Alpe d'Huez. Overall, Conti moves to 6th, Pantani climbs to 5th, and Luc Leblanc goes up to 3rd. They're all behind Miguel Indurain. With the Alpe behind them, Bourg is the start for another severe day in the mountains. More than 60 riders have now abandoned the Tour de France. The first climb comes after only 36 kilometers. The Col de Glandon, and carries the race up to 1,924 meters. The one that follows is the Col de La Madeleine, a renowned climb in the race's history and slightly higher at 1,984 meters. And then the long ascent begins of more than 30 kilometers to the highest point at Val Thorens at 2,275 meters. And that's where we are now, and the race already on its way towards us. This is day 2 in the Alps of 4 very tough days this year, and the battle for second place in Paris is certain to continue. But Miguel Indurain has built a big lead, and now he rides a very clever race tactically. Yesterday he controlled the field with his own experience, and indeed with the help of a very willing team. Here's Paul Sherwin now to explain more.
Miguel Indurain is the undisputed leader of the pack and his own team. In this instance, he sprints forward to order Erwin Nijboer to stop setting the pace. When the race goes into the mountains, the orders will change. Indurain will use his teammates at the front to dictate the pace that he wants, to either chase down breakaways or even to nullify attacks. He will ride in a slipstream to save as much energy as possible, because once the race reaches the high mountains, the responsibility of leadership lies solely on his shoulders. With 3 big mountains today, he'll have to use all his strength and tactical know-how to get him through the stage.
Well, thank you, Paul. Well, this is what happened on the first climb today, the Col de Glandon, and Indurain having no problem controlling the field because they're not in the mood for racing at all. Riding up at around about 12 to 15 kilometers an hour, but you never know what will happen, and this happened at the back of the field, and it's Marco Pantani, the great climber, in collision with Alberto Elli, and Pantani has come off the worst. He's hurt his left knee and his left arm and is stunned. Teammates who waited for him are Mario Montalvan, Remo Rossi, Mario Chiesa. They got him almost back to the field, but there was a small acceleration. He went off the back again, continually visiting the doctor and obviously in pain. Over the top of the climb, it was Richard Virenque winning a bunch sprint on top of a first category climb ahead of Peter de Klerk and Oscar Pelliccioli. And in fact, over the top, Pantani was 1 minute behind the field with a lot of work to do. The field then began the long descent, stringing out as they headed off now down towards the valley, and now next will be the long climb of the Col de la Madeleine, and it remains to be seen whether indeed Pantani will be with them. Completed the long descents, and now the attacks have started on the climb of the Col de la Madeleine. In fact, they started about halfway up when Bjarne Riis, Peter Jugenhoff, the 2G Risk team riders, and Nelson Rodriguez of the ZG team, they went clear. But now we're watching the scrap here as the other riders try to join them. Indurain now also being forced out of the group. Pantani, despite his injury, has attacked, and in fact he's countered an attack made by his teammate Vladimir Pulnikov. The rivalry continuing among the two Carrera riders. This is Richard Virenque, who's going with Pantani again, his rival, his serious rival for the King of the Mountains competition. So Pantani then at the moment is chasing Vladimir Pulnikov. Ahead of Pulnikov is Jim van der Leer, one of the few Belgians who really can climb. and then about 1 minute and 40 seconds ahead of Pantani are the three leaders, and it's Peter Ugramov, Bjorn Ries and Rodriguez. They've been climbing all of the climb in that order, all of the work being done by Ugramov, who is lying overall in 9th position. Roberto Conti, the hero of yesterday on Alpe d'Huez, now pacing Miguel Indurain, Alex Zula. And then we've got also in this group, I think Luc Leblanc is just about hanging on. The big man who's been lost out, though, Paul, is Armand de las Cuevas, over 2 3/4 minutes back now.
He's a long way back. He looked as if he was suffering as soon as the race began, the climb here. And in fact, Thomas Davy dropped back initially to try and help him, but now Davy's been lost from the yellow jersey group, and you can see now that Roberto Conti, a little bit further down the line, is putting the pressure on to try and get up to these riders, and Richard Virenque knows that he has to stay with Marco Pantani. But it's so great to see Pantani recovered from that crash, because at one moment I thought he was in such a bad way that he was actually going to have to retire.
We're now looking here at Miguel Indurain on the climb of the Col de la Madeleine. 1 minute 40, he is behind now the riders who attacked midway up, Bjorn Ries, Ugramov and Nelson Rodriguez.
And it looks now as if Miguel Indurain has decided is enough on the slopes of the climb here, because he's put the pressure on, and that pressure has got rid of Luc Leblanc, who was lying in 3rd place overall this morning. Armand de las Cuevas is a lot way further down the mountain as well, and Indurain just with a slight acceleration came straight up to Pantani. What an incredible man.
And the man they want today is the man at the front of these three leaders on the top as we come towards the top of the Col de la Madeleine. It is Peter Ugramov, because he lies 9th overall. He's 14 minutes plus off the lead of Indurain, but of course Pantani would like to make sure he doesn't open too much of a gap on him and catch him up in the overall classification. Bjorn Ries in 2nd place has struggled all the way up, yet he's managed to sit in there in 2nd place. And Rodriguez, he's really been along for the ride. He's done nothing whatsoever. He has just sat there and let the other two, because he knows the other two want to open the gap over that chase group, and he's taking full advantage of it.
Well, Ries is really going to regret the 15 minutes he lost on the stage we went over the Mont Ventoux, because at that time he was lying in 7th place overall. Now he's some 25 minutes behind Miguel Indurain, and that 15 minutes would have put him as a serious contender today. But Ugramov doing all the work. He's going to try and get over the top with his teammate Bjorn Ries, and then the two of them can work together to try and keep that deficit ahead of Miguel Indurain on the descent.
So the top of the Col de la Madeleine, nobody is going to challenge Peter Ugramov, who's led all of the way up it since the attack was launched, followed over the top by his Danish teammate Bjorn Ries, who now zips up ready for the plunge to the valley below. If the newspapers are offered, I'm sure they'll take them. And in 3rd place, Nelson Rodriguez. Those are the three men over the top of the Col de la Madeleine. This is the battle now for the next men over. And Marco Pantani, you can still see on his knee there the bloodstain of the crash on the descent before they made the climb of the Col du Glandon. But he seems to be settling back in again now. These really are the cream. Pantani, Virenque 2nd overall, Miguel Indurain here, who is the leader, of course, and Alex Zula trying to climb away from the 10th place he currently occupies, because he really was expected to be a top 4 finish in Paris. And taking the points again away from Pantani and making that polka dot jersey look realistically his now is Richard Virenque. He pulls away and snatches 4th place at the top, and behind him 5th for Pantani. And that we would never have thought a few miles ago when he had that crash and looked to be going out of the Tour.
Well, it's fantastic to see that he has recovered, but a little bit further down it looks as if Luc Leblanc has recovered somewhat as well as we come up to the top. It's going to be it's going to be Richard Virenque. In fact, Miguel Indurain decided, look boys, don't forget I'm the strong man here, so he went over ahead of Richard Virenque, but a little bit further back it looks as if Luc Leblanc has recovered, and he should reintegrate with the yellow jersey group on the descent.
Well, just look at this. This really is a sad sight. He was 3rd overall. Yesterday he dropped to 4th, and today, the 2nd day in the Alps, he really has cracked. Armand de las Cuevas losing now more than 5 minutes as he struggles to the top of the Col de la Madeleine, and he still has the long climb of Val Thorens to come. A sad day indeed for this man from Castorama, and we'll take a break.
Welcome back to the high point of this year's tour, the summit of Val Thorens. There are some committed cycling fans up here today and arguably anyone who sits out on a mountainside in single-digit temperatures for 8 hours should be committed. Anyway, I digress. The fact is that a little bit of a chill won't keep away the truly faithful, and with me are a couple, Andy and Peter from Cumbernauld, and you've not only travelled all the way from Scotland to see the Tour, you actually rode Alpe d'Huez yesterday. How was it?
Oh, very painful to both of us. Severe cramp in both legs, perhaps?
Yeah, we cramped up in the legs as we approached the summit, but we had to stop a couple of times, but we got there eventually.
Gives you a real appreciation of what the pros go through.
Oh, it's amazing. I don't know how these guys got up, never mind race. It's just beyond me.
Got nothing but the greatest respect for them. It's just a shame Robert Miller wasn't there this year.
Absolutely, no Robert Miller. There is some more Scottish representation on this mountain, though. Rumoured, we haven't found him yet, but rumoured to be on the mountain is a man in full Highland regalia, kilt the lot, who is going to pipe the riders up to the summit. Should be quite a sight and quite a sound. Back to the race on the road, though, now with Phil and Paul.
Well, thanks, Gary, and we're coming up towards you now. We're just 5 kilometres away from the finish. The 2 of the 3 men that went over the top of the Col De La Madeleine have survived, and in fact the rider in the front here, Peter Abramoff, he launched a tremendous attack at the start of this climb, and he shed his teammate Bjorn Ries, and he was hoping he would have shed the little limpet at the back here, Nelson Rodriguez. He's followed Abramoff everywhere he's gone, and in fact has attacked him once or twice, but Abramoff has answered those attacks. The field generally behind regrouped, but they split up again. We've now a very select group of some 15 men, including, of course, Miguel Indurain in the yellow jersey. And the last time check we got was just inside 3 minutes and 20 seconds. So it looks as though this breakaway, which was a gamble, is going to pay off for one of these 2 riders. De Las Cuevas, by the way, that struggled over the top of the mountain some 5 minutes back, is a lot further back than that now, although we don't have an accurate fix on him. We think we're talking of around about 10 minutes. So De Las Cuevas is dropping out of the top 6 riders overall in the Tour tonight. There's the chase group, just gone clear of them. Rolf Sørensen of Denmark, and they've swept up Bjorn Ries, who's passed through the bunch here. And now on the far side of the road, we've waited for the attack, and it looks as though Pantani is going to launch the attack at around about 5 kilometres to go. And Pantani goes now again, Paul. This is the 5th time he's done this. Surely he can't bridge 3 minutes.
Well, he may well not be able to, but I think you've got to take your hat off to this man because he's had a terrible day today. He had that crash very early on the Col de Glandon, and in fact I was quite convinced he may well abandon it. Took him a lot of time to get going, and he has tried. Luc Leblanc has decided, no, I don't think I can stay with him. I'll stay with the security of the yellow jersey group because I think this man is going to blow me away, and he really has got a fantastic attack as soon as it goes uphill.
So smooth, he is a pure climber. It's a pity he's never had a real shot at the stage win at all, except the very first time he went onto the mountains in the Pyrenees at Hautacam, where he did go and was the leader on the road, and he fell short by a couple of kilometres when he blew and hit the wall, and Miguel Indurain in a very powerful force that day went by him. But now he's going again, and our caption says Luc Leblanc, but in fact this, believe me, as we all know, the man in white is Marco Pantani. And now he's off in pursuit just ahead of him, and not very far ahead of him, and I think we can see him. Yes, we can. That's Rolf Sørensen, who attacked about a kilometre further down the mountain, and now we'll see the difference. This is the situation of 4 kilometres, and the 2 riders continuing to plod happily on, but Paul, now there's exactly a kilometre between them. Can they do it?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, if there's one man in this whole race can bridge the gap to those 2 leaders, this is the man we're looking at now, number 56, Marco Pantani. He's got the speed, he's had a tough day, and I think he'll try and offer this stage to Claudio Chiappucci because he would so dearly love to have Claudio Chiappucci here with him today, and that's not possible. Chiappucci left the race in the Pyrenees, and Pantani has jumped clear of the main field, and he's really got the hammer down now.
Well, now we see the reaction of Indurain, and there isn't really a great deal of reaction at all. He continues to drive the group along. Pantani has picked up Rolf Sørensen, and now look at that, he just accelerates straight through Sørensen, a stage winner this year on the Tour for the first time, as under the banner goes the yellow jersey. And what's the gap, Paul?
Well, I'm waiting for the Pantani to come up to the 4 kilometre banner here because it's more important for me to see just how far behind he is at the 4 kilometre mark on the 2 leaders, and he's flying away from them now at the moment.
And so Pantani, a true climber, just keeps his rhythm, jumps out of the saddle, lifted, gets back into the saddle again, pedals a low gear.
Look at this, he really doesn't think about anything but going uphill as fast as he can. If we can just get alongside him and see the concentration on his face, you can still see the scars of that crash that he had earlier in the day. He had a long time trying to get back into his rhythm, and he really did suffer on the first few kilometers of the Col de Glandon.
And there we have Indurain, and he's got for company Roberto Conti again on his right, and on his left is Alex Zula. And he's now left to do all of the work. His Benesto team actually on this climb today were dropped very early on. He's on his own, he's unprotected if he does have a problem. And he's having to now finish off every stage of the tour in the mountains himself. His team may be getting tired.
Well, this is Marco Pantani coming up to the 4-kilometer banner, and he's taken back almost a minute in the 2 minutes since he's attacked, so he's really flying up the mountain here. It's quite interesting to know that these days when the riders come into the mountains, when I was racing they would use a 42-tooth sprocket on the front of their chain rings, and nowadays they've gone down to a 38-tooth sprocket, which allows them to actually have much closer gear ratios than they would normally.
So that gives them a lesser jump in pedaling revolutions as they change through the gears. And Indurain, as always, pedals a little bit of a lower gear than everybody else. He's a very supple rider, and as you can see, he just sits there and turns like a windmill, while the riders behind tend to push a slightly higher gear to hang on. You have to be a tremendously good rider to pedal quickly like that. You'll see that the non-climbers tend to ride a higher gear and just try to use brute force to keep up with him.
That's the big advantage Miguel Indurain has. Although he's an extremely strong rider, when he goes into a climbing situation, he can use a very small gear and climb subtly. 3 kilometers to go for the two leaders, and let's hope that Marco Pantani can get back into contention. He really is flying along. Now, the big problem for the two leaders is they're going to start watching each other, because Piotr Abramoff has tried once or twice to get clear from those two riders. And looking at his chainring here, most of the other riders in this race are on this small chainring, and he's going up here on the big chainring.
Unbelievable. I think, you know, the crash has released so much adrenaline now that he is a man very, very determined to at last get a stage win. He's trying to bridge what we thought was an impossible gap at this stage of the race. He's flying across it at the moment. So now they're coming up towards the 1.5 kilometer to go point, and Peter Ugramov and Nelson Rodriguez are under pressure from Pantani, but they may have just about hung on to share the fight for the stage win here.
Well, it's been a fantastic ride by Peter Ugramov. In fact, they took advantage of the launching of the attack by the Once squad. Now, as we get near to the finish, Ugramov taking a chance to tighten up his shoes just to make sure that everything is right when it comes to the sprint. He doesn't want a mistake. Swings across the right-hand side of the road, takes a little look here, and that's very dangerous, because every time they slow down like this, it gives Marco Pantani a little more chance to come back into contention.
Well, they could well play the cat and mouse tactics we normally reserve for the velodromes around the world when they go sprinting. 1 minute and 3, Pantani is flying away from the group here of Miguel Indurain, and he is gaining time. Overall, he is 5th. He will go over De Las Cuevas, no problem tonight. But you know, Luc Leblanc is also the next target man now for Pantani, who could well find himself up to 3rd overall with this attack tonight, and he certainly deserves that as a reward for his constant attacking towards the end of every mountain stage. Well, conditions have become so bad we can't even pick you up a picture from about 600 meters away now. We're going to have to go to our fixed finish cameras here and see the sprint started. Colombia have yet to win a stage of the Tour de France. They've come close, they've had second places, but now they're looking for the victory here from the smallest man in the race, Nelson Rodriguez. As the crowd start to applaud, I should imagine the sprint has also started, and the man in blue is Peter Ugramov, and he's got the lead, as he has had virtually throughout this breakaway. He's now trying to force the Colombian to open the attacking on his left shoulder. It's going to be a close sprint indeed, though, as they go briefly into this tunnel at 400 meters from the line. Now, we may lose pictures in the tunnel here. In fact, we've got a fixed camera in the tunnel, so we're going to see them right through the tunnel as we come out of it at 400 meters to go now. And I think Ugramov is going to more or less give this to the little Colombian, because he's going to lead him out too easily. And we would expect the Colombian climber to have something of a reasonable finish. Certainly Ugramov is not a great sprinter, but he's trying desperately to force the Colombian to do something about it. But this little man is not going to be outmaneuvered at this stage. He must have more strength left than Ugramov, because he sat at the back for virtually the whole of the day. Ugramov starts, he'll probably weave him across towards the barriers and pretend he doesn't know he's there, if he can squeeze something out of him. But in fact, Nelson Rodriguez now is starting to fire well and comes through quite clearly the winner, as the man who's done all of the work and slams his handlebars, Ugramov, gives way to Rodriguez of Colombia on the line. And there is the rider now speeding up. Look how close he got, Paul, because he's now into the tunnel. And so he closed dramatically over those last 2 kilometres.
Well, he's closed more than 3 minutes on these 2 leaders. In fact, he's going to be less than 45 seconds behind at the top. What a shame. I really wish that this man could have won the stage today. I had him down as one of my favourites. He's done an incredible ride over the last 4 or 5 kilometres and bridged an enormous gap. Just a couple more kilometres, and this is the man who would have taken the stage victory today after such a terrible day for him when he crashed and was so close to abandoning. You can still see the scar on his knee there as he comes up to the last couple of 100 metres.
So robbed again, and this is the 5th time in the mountains he's made a late run for gold, and he's been robbed again. And don't forget, today he crashed very early on the Col de Glandon, and he must at some stage have contemplated retiring from the Tour de France. He recovered because the race went so slowly until they crossed the Col De La Madeleine, and my goodness me, he showed them he was well back on form when he came up here to the finish of Val Thorens. 1 minute and 7 seconds behind on the line. Tremendous climb by Pantani. So 2:12 is the time, which will cost LeBlanc his 3rd place overall to Marco Pantani, and it's going to be very, very close indeed. And that's why LeBlanc is having to lead out here, and he sat up.
In fact, I think he's cracked, Phil. He really tried to get across there, and he got into the tunnel and realised he'd gone too far out, and he lost all the weight.
So he's lost 3rd place at the moment in the Tour de France. Marco Pantani up to 5th yesterday, up to 3rd today, despite the crash. And it's left to Miguel Indurain now to take 4th place. And in fact, Luc Leblanc is hanging on to the tail of his teammate Richard Virenque, who will be the next man in the sight of Marco Pantani, perhaps tomorrow, as Virenque takes on Indurain, gets his revenge from the top of the Col de la Madeleine and beats Indurain to the line for 4th place. So after we had the tallest man in the race a few days ago win the stage, today we had the smallest man in the race, Nelson Rodriguez of Colombia, outspin Peter Ugramov for the stage win. In 3rd place, Marco Pantani after that superb pursuit up the mountain. 4th, Richard Virenque, and 5th, Miguel Indurain. On the podium tonight, Nelson Rodriguez, and I'm not surprised, he's a happy man. But De Los Cuevas, well, he's very unhappy. He finished in a group led home by Sean Yates, 20 minutes and 1 second behind. But at least he was inside the official time limit. The time limit today was 7%, and more than 60 riders should have been eliminated from the Tour. But the organiser asked the race referees if they would allow the time limit to be extended to 10%, and they agreed. So everybody was reinstated. Overall, Miguel Indurain now leads Richard Virenque. Up into 3rd place is Pantani, down to 4th is Leblanc, and up into 5th is Roberto Conti. Miguel Indurain, always in yellow, salutes the crowd who warmly applaud him. Well, we stay in the Alps again tomorrow, and there are more mountains still to cross. Just time to remind you to enter our competition this Sunday. The race ends on the Champs-Élysées. It should be a day for the sprinter, of course. And when you think you have the winner, this is the number to ring: 0891 44 44 44. 0891 44 44 44. And if you're correct, then you go into the hat. First name out will win Miguel Indurain's yellow jersey, signed, of course, by him. And that's assuming he wins this year's Tour de France. The mist descends here on a very cold Val Thorens. Let's hope it's a bit warmer tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.